And joining us again, who's now become a regular, so much so that he's got a question to answer from one of the listeners, Dillon Davis from the Delaware Gazette, joining us after press conferences with Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, and Will Howard. Dillon, how you doing tonight, bud?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. It's hard to believe that we're already in the second week, and just the way these weeks roll, we'll be doing shows for week 4 and 5, and previewing the Oregon game, and it's crazy that it's week 2 already. So excited to be on again, and excited to talk some more Buckeye football.
So Ryan Day talked today, and one of the things that he brought up was things that he's doing different now during the game. He's not calling plays. What's he doing with this time? What did he have to say about that?
Well, I think just what I got from Ryan is he's still trying to figure it out. I don't think, he went to it with any set plan. Obviously, as we know, that he wants to have more of a, an impact on other areas of the field. So, he talked a little bit about, the iPad thing that they have now where they can look at iPads and review things on there. So he has time for that and whatnot, and just visiting with the different position groups and whatnot. So it's different. I think, again, I don't think he knew going into Saturday what he was definitely going to do or not do, or, how he's going to do it and whatnot. And just, we talk about so much of the filling out process for the team and, the coaching staff and, Chip Kelly being a new play caller here, or, being a first time play caller at Ohio State, everybody's trying to figure stuff out, and Ryan's just kind of trying to figure out his place. And so it was definitely interesting to hear him just talk about it, but you could tell, I got the sense that he's still trying to figure it out himself. And I don't know. I don't know if he likes it. It's part of me kind of sounded like he resented, the way his Saturdays are now. But at the same time, obviously, it was his choice. He's the one that wanted to do this, and for all the right reasons. So I think he's still trying to figure it out. But it was interesting talking about just like I said, the things that he had time for. And again, that iPad thing or the tablet thing is new, and even if he was when he was calling plays, I'm not sure how much time he would have had to review that and whatnot. But that's an interesting dynamic, because if you think about Chip Kelly being up in the box, and we talked about last week, just the ability to stay focused on the offense and not have to worry about anything else, being up in the box and not having all that chaos around you and whatnot. So he's getting that information in real time. Ryan has time to look at that information in real time now, because he's not singularly focused on one thing. So you have those two offensive minds being able to spend time on that. So that's a really good thing for Ohio State.
Chip Kelly said that he hasn't been up in the box since 2008. He also mentioned that he doesn't call different plays for Trey or Quinn, which I think that's pretty interesting. I think a lot of people thought that they might have, they got a little bit of a different skill set. He doesn't really see it that way.
Yeah. So perhaps the most telling thing for me out of that conversation, so going back to what he said, somebody asked him if he finds himself calling different plays, or if he finds, certain things that he likes to do with Trey that, maybe he likes to do some other things for Quinshon. And that's not the case, he said. And he said both of them are such similar backs, which, I thought I was kind of interesting, because, I was kind of more, under the notion that Quinshon was probably more of just like that true power back, that downhill runner and whatnot. But, I think people don't give Travion enough credit for how hard he does run, and that he doesn't shy away from the physicality, and that he's strong too. And so Chip said that, for both of those guys being similar backs, that he doesn't feel the need to call different plays or set up different things for different backs depending on who's in the game, because he just feels like he can do it all. They both can run between the tackles. They both have, the speed and the quickness and the cutting ability to get out on the edge and make plays out there. So he said he doesn't need to, doesn't feel the need to change it up at all, or scheme up certain things for certain backs. But the most telling thing I thought was that he threw James Peoples into that conversation as well, and said he felt James Peoples is the same way, that he's just like Quinshon and Travion, that he can do a little bit of everything. And he's comfortable running between the tackles, with the power to do so, and still shifty enough to get out on the edge and do damage out there. So, yeah, I was a little surprised that that he said that, there's nothing that he wants to do with one guy that maybe he wouldn't do so much with the other. But I was most surprised, not the surprise, because I know James Peoples is a really good player. And look, he was one of my big takeaways on Saturday. I thought he looked fantastic, but I was just surprised that he just automatically that quickly just threw him in there and said, hey, he's the same kind of guy. He can do everything as well. So, good news for the Buckeye running back room.
The talk of the town, basically, it's been Arvell Reese for the last couple of days. We talked a bit about Arvell in our post-game wrap-up, Ryan Day talked about Arvell a bit today. He said that he started off maybe a little bit slow in his preparation for the week and then kind of surged, came on strong, said he looked great. Any coach in America would love to have an athlete like that, and hoping to get him some more reps. Said he's earned some more reps, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he was very direct at the top of his response to that question about Arvell, that Arvell's, deserves more reps. And like you said, Ryan said, it goes back to the preparation and a little bit of inconsistencies with the preparation, which is not uncommon for, again, a guy who's still, very young in his career. But it sounds like when Arvell, prepares well, and he did this week, then you see what happens on the field, and he plays well. So, look, we know what Arvell is talent-wise. I mean, he's just a freak at his size and the way he runs. We know that. Again, we talked about it on Saturday. He was like, one of the most, impressive players I saw for Ohio State on Saturday. With a lot of great individual efforts. He was one of the most impressive. He's one of the ones that stood out the most to me. So we know what he is from a talent standpoint, and it sounds like it's just a matter of preparing week after week and becoming that guy. And that's just a maturation process that every young player has to go to. Sometimes guys have it right away, and that's awesome. J.J. Smith, perfect example. But that's not common. That's not typical. So as Arvell continues to mature in that way, with that talent, with that skill set, it sounds like he's going to play more and more. And look, we don't know the situation with Cody right now, and when he's going to return. So that would naturally create more snaps for Arvell. And just like I said on Saturday, I made this comment that for whatever reason, if Cody was out for an extended period of time, I understand that the talent level that they're playing against right now is weak, and it'll ramp up and whatnot. But I honestly feel like, I would be confident that if Ohio State had to take, Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese as, their two primary linebackers into a game against, a good football team, I would be confident in them because of how impressed I was with Arvell. So, he's coming along. I hope he finds that consistency in preparation because I want to see that dude that we saw on Saturday out there running around for the Silver Bullets, because that was fun to watch.
Yeah, it really was a lot of fun to watch. And he's getting a lot of run, and rightfully so. Additionally to him coming in, Austin Searveld started at left guard.
Yeah.
Did pretty doggone good. Ryan Day said that he played like a first-time starter. Chip said something to the similar effect, but both seemed pretty pleased with his performance. He had some missed assignments, but he did his man for the most part. You know what I mean? He didn't look out of place out there. He didn't look outmatched. He's had quite the surge. We weren't talking about him in the spring, other than he's another guy that eventually might be one of the guys that end up starting for this team. You had Luke fighting for the right guard spot. Where was Hinsman going to go? And now we got Hinsman with 10 snaps on Saturday at right guard. Austin starts at left guard. Has he surged to the top of those interior guys, that next guy up?
It would seem to be the case. I certainly, if you're asking me, I would say so. I mean, if you're just talking pure depth chart, first guy off the bench, if one of those guards went down, it's not the same playing left guard and right guard. A lot of people just think, well, a guard's a guard, and it's not necessarily the case at all. It can be a little bit of a transition, flipping sides. To say that would Austin be the first guy in at right guard, I don't know. A position, because Austin's been playing most in the preseason behind Donovan. So would Carson or Austin be the first guy off the bench if Tegro, if they're going to rotate guys in the right? I don't know that necessarily, but I think in general, I think that Austin surged up the board to where you feel most confident, about that guy coming into the game. I would say, and look, Ryan said that, like, as you mentioned, he looked like a first-time starter with potential, but he said, he could still play even when Donovan Jackson returns. How much, obviously is dependent on, is Donovan limited at all, or, what obviously the game situationally, what's happened in the game. But, it sounds like Austin's going to continue to play and get time. So, look, it's a wonderful, regardless of if it's him or Carson, who's that, that top reserve guard, it doesn't matter, because Ohio State desperately needs to identify depth along the offensive line as a whole. So if it's Austin, if it's if it's Carson, regardless, the fact that they have two guys that they would be comfortable playing is big news for the Buckeyes because without Austin showing what he did on Saturday, or just playing well and practice enough for them to put him in the game as a starter on Saturday, they were one injury away, and Donovan Jackson's already going through it right now, one injury away from guard, and you're like, man, what do you do here from here on out at guard? And we talked about that, early in the preseason as well. So it's great news. Like I said, I don't know if he's, the top backup guard, and I don't know how, that exactly works, but again, with flipping sides and whatnot, but his surge is definitely big for Ohio State's depth situation along the offensive line. And man, did they need it.
Yeah, for sure. Seth McLaughlin. Oh, is it McLaughlin or McLaughlin? I think it's McLaughlin. He looked really good, dude. He looked really darn good. And Tegra, doing my rewatch, I keyed in on that offensive line. Tegra, he really was impressive for his first start. Like, that was excellent. They all missed a couple of assignments, but all in all, my second time through, I was like, okay, this was not as bad as I thought originally, because I went in thinking like they're going to dominate. And then when they didn't, then when I went back the second time, I was looking at it through a different eye, a different expectation, and realized maybe that was just my preconceived notion going in that made me feel so dejected towards the end of the game about that first half. But all in all, I think that they're going to be able to clean this up pretty quick. And looking at the other teams in the Big Ten, I was very encouraged because they started, not just the Big Ten, a lot of the big teams around college football started off really poorly.
Yeah.
So that made me feel a little better as well. You got to talk to Will Howard. Will Howard said something that I loved, which was something to the effect of, I want the guys to look at me. Like, as I go, we go. I want them to look at me and be like, I want to be that guy, which is exactly how he looked out there on Saturday.
Yeah. Look, Will made it very clear from the day that he got here that he came here to win the starting job, and then he knew what it took to, have to go do that. And one of the first things he had to do was kind of endear himself to his teammates, and he put a major emphasis on getting to know everybody, developing relationships all up and down, the roster, to do that. And that was all with the intention of being the starter, because he did want to be that guy. I mean, he came to Ohio State to be that guy. He had, plenty of times to be that guy. At Kansas State. And I think with Will, he probably has a little bit of I don't want to say unique, but he has an evolved perspective on, just being a starter of a maybe not Ohio State level, but a big time college football program, and having that taken away from you. Essentially having a coaching staff say, like, we think this other guys give us a better chance to win. That's got to be a huge blow to someone's, I don't want to say ego, but
I got you.
Yeah, and so he has that to build on. So when he came to Ohio State, obviously he came here to be the starter, wants to be the starter, and just wants to be the guy again in a huddle on the field for an offense. And so and you've seen that when you talk about taking command. And again, it's the one thing that Ryan always said when it came back to Will Howard, and and why he ended up winning that job, taking command. Like, taking command of an offense is obviously, there are multiple ways to do that. And the first thing you have to know the offense, you have to be able to run the offense, whatnot. But it's also just being the dude in that huddle, and actually in a true huddle now, because you're going to see some more huddling. We saw, but being the dude in the huddle, guys looking at you and saying that, hey, this guy's going to take us where we need to go, come hell or high water. He's tough. We always knew that, and that's just what you saw on Saturday. That's what you would expect out of Will. The way he's talked, the way he carries himself, that's exactly what you expected, and we saw that on Saturday. It's a great quote. He's not a cocky kid at all. He's a very humble, well-spoken kid at all, but he's very confident, in the sense that he knows exactly what he wants, how he wants to do it, where he wants to go, and he shares that with you. And just as an aside, I can't remember too many people in his position, prominent players and major roles at Ohio State, that were this open and relaxed, talking to the media, and willing to actually talk and share things, and let people kind of peek behind the curtains about what makes that person go, or what drives them and whatnot. And Will's just been absolutely refreshing since he got here, to talk to, because he actually lets you into who Will Howard is and what makes him tick. So that's been a lot of fun. So I'm happy to hear that that he wants to be that guy, and that he is that guy right now, and I think he'll continue to be that guy.
I actually heard somebody ask him that at the press conference today, how he likes talking to the media. Also asked him about his poor play, the play where he kind of he did not look happy to be asked that question.
No.
Kind of stared daggers through him, which I found just hilarious. Another one was the tush push play. Chip Kelly got asked about that, and does it have a name? First off, he said that they'd keep running it if they could convert it 90% of the time. And then he was asked, does it have a name? Which he said, no, it doesn't have a name. And he tasked you guys on the beat to come up with a name. Do you have any candidates, Dillon?
I was thinking maybe like the Bucks truck or the Buck truck, something like that.
Buck truck.
Yeah.
I like it.
I don't know. I literally just in the last 5 seconds as you were setting up that question, that's the first thing that came to my mind. I did not give a single thought to this question or what we might name that since they asked that. So that just came off the top of my head. So
we are going to make it work, just like we made that team out west.
Yeah.
USC, I've decided, has stolen that moniker.
I agree.
Oregon does not get it. They don't get to self-gloss them saying the team out west, to self-gloss that nickname. USC is that team out west, and that's just what it's going to be, the Buck truck, that team out west for the Trojans. And I've got one more for you. You are now such a regular. We've got a question from a viewer for Dillon. Could I make a request of Dillon? Could he ask Will Howard about how the helmet comms went? Good, bad details. I did see Will throw his arms up a few times like he didn't get the call in the headset. I don't think anyone has asked about the comms at all.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the question. One of the things that I love the most about this job is being able to just talk Buckeye football. People, that's literally why I wanted to do it. I love to write. I love Buckeye football, and I love talking to people about Buckeye football in different ways. So I truly enjoy. I try to make it a point. Anybody who responds to me on Twitter or something like that, always commenting back, because I know as a lot of these hot shots, not just on this beat but other beats, as they get bigger, they're not making the time to do that. And I also understand to some degree when with a lot of the replies they get, that would be tough to do. But I try to make it a point to do that. So I appreciate the question. First of all, but to that question. Will actually got talked. There was a lot of talk today about the comms, as you would expect. Our first time getting to kind of really talk to him about, just a game without, specific questions in the aftermath of the game, like it was on Saturday. But there were a lot of questions about the comms today between Ryan and Will. And, Will Howard made the comment, and he's right. The guy who submitted the question, I assume a guy, I apologize if not.
Yeah, Woody's.
Yeah, Woody's.
Yeah.
To that point about throwing his hands up, there were times Will kind of alluded to that where he maybe didn't have the call and whatnot, but they still have the hand signals in place. So if something happens where maybe they're not getting the call, or we talked about it, on our last talk, I believe, I was curious to see what happens if, after that 15-second mark and it gets shut down. What if you didn't get to play yet? Or, what if something happened and what's the next step? Where do they go from there? So Will said that they still have the hand signals in place, but it said that there was still, you can kind of just suggest that there was still plenty of feeling out to it, and talked about the newness of it and that they're still getting used to it and whatnot. But they always have those hand signals to fall back on should they need to. But overall, he said it went pretty well for the first game. And look, everybody in the country is trying to feel this out. It's new. People are still trying to figure out how much they want to huddle, when they want to huddle, how much they still want to go tempo, which again is why those hand signals are really in place still, is because when you go tempo, you're not waiting for that play to get called in. They'll just throw it in from the sideline. So if anybody thought that the hand signals were just, out altogether, that's not true at all, especially for teams who like to go tempo or switch it up throughout the game. So they still have those hand signals in place for that. And certainly it helps if something happens with the comms. But, all in all, as Will said that it went pretty well, but certainly he alluded to there were some issues, and there probably will be, and that's just part of the week. Yeah. And that's the reality. I guess it's kind of a, scary thought when, the stakes get ramped up and, or, if it's a close game in the second half and something like that happens. But it sounds like, and again, Will said they've been working on this since the spring. So I mean, Will's had this, the Ohio State's had this like everybody else, since spring practice started. So they've had a ton of work with those comms and, just understanding how they work, how well they work, and what to do when they don't work. So, I'm sure they have a pretty good contingency plan in place if something goes wrong with that. But it's just going to be interesting, when they have issues with it, and what, the situation of it when it does happen, and how they handle it. And that's just something that remains to be seen. Nobody really knows. And for as well as, obviously everybody has, a plan in place. And then when something goes wrong, or that plan, is out the window, then what do you do? So Ohio State has a plan, but, it's just one of those things you have to see week to week and hope that it doesn't hurt them too bad in a big situation.
So Dillon, Ryan was talking today about metrics for the playoff and in regards to guys coming in later in the game, playing the depth, playing the guys towards the end of the game, and every single rep counts. And he was referring to metrics for the playoff. Basically, they're going to be looking at so many different data points. Can you explain a little more about what he's talking about?
Yeah, so that's actually something he said after the game on Saturday. He mentioned I don't remember what the question was, but he just referenced again playing those guys, but like putting those guys in, and still trying to run the offense and score, and which is a conversation we've had in the past that we wanted to see anyways. But Ryan said that's something they're doing, but he referenced these metrics with with regard to the college football playoff, and then today when he was asked about it, he kind of talked about wanting to hit these certain metrics. I don't think he shared what the metrics were. I could be misremembering, but I don't think he shared specifically any metrics, but he referenced these metrics that they want to hit, in order to kind of, for lack of a better word, play to the college football, playoff committee. And then he talked about, and this seems kind of counterintuitive, or it did to me at first, but then when I thought about it more, I guess it makes sense. He talked about there being a lot more discussion and in that room with the committee this year with the playoff than there were in years past. And, again, at first I thought, well, why would there be more discussion, with more spots, as opposed to, 4 spots, and obviously, more competition for those 4 spots. But then he kind of talked about, with say take 7 and 8, those spots and whatnot. There's so many more teams involved in this that you're going to need to look at so many more data points to kind of try to stack these teams up and figure out, how they shake out in terms of seeding.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they have a game plan of like, hey, we want to try to hit these marks and whatnot, or we feel like these are the things that we need to get to. And unless I'm missing something, I don't think there's any like criteria that the college football playoff committee put out, not criteria, but any kind of guidelines that said, hey, we're going to value this, and this year. I don't think I missed that. So
No.
it sounds to me like it's just Ryan and Ohio State saying that these are the things we want to do because we think if we can achieve these things week in and week out, this will give us our best case with the college football playoff committee. And again, he's right that there will be a lot more discussion in the sense that there are going to be so many more teams, and the college football playoff has such a larger job on its hands of not just ranking these teams, but figuring out how do you break probably more tiebreakers and how do you separate this team and that team, and you can't just do it for 4 teams, you got to do it for 12, really, I guess technically 8 because the top 4 we know are going to be automatic
Right.
bids, but even with 8 you have double those conversations, so it makes sense. I would be curious to know what those metrics are. I don't know, maybe as the season goes on and any references and more mentions and more, maybe we can get some more out of them in that respect. But
The metric is pedal to the metal, Dillon.
that's what I took it as, right? I mean, like what else could it be, except for go out and beat everybody 70-0. Like that's, I mean, again, refreshing. I'm glad that they feel that way, and I'm glad that means that when guys come in the third quarter, that they're still going to have an offense to run, or that they're still going to go try to steal another score to make it look better and a little bit of window dressing. I'm glad to hear that, but that's all I could think of is what metrics. It's just beating everybody as bad as you can. So whatever.
Yeah. They let Devin Brown throw the ball a couple times, and he missed high on his balls that he missed. And to me, it just kind of goes in with what I've always thought about Devin. This guy just needs some time to, get a good chunk of a game in just one time and see if he can calm himself down.
Yeah.
He's just always too amped up. But, Brian Day said they're maybe going to go to him early, or earlier at some point here in the next couple games. Boy, I'd sure like to see it, because you're going to need to get this guy dialed in at some point. I feel it's kind of scary. I just want to see him come and have one good one under his belt. You know what I mean? Like a good 2 quarters of football in case you need him for some confidence, because things have not been going great.
Look, I've already seen, person after person start calling for, Julian saying to be, QB2. Not even saying that that's not ultimately what, makes Ohio State the best football team. But kind of what we talked about last week is that nobody knows with Devin. Like nobody truly knows. If Ryan Day and Chip Kelly feel like Devin Brown is their number 2 quarterback, then they better go get him, time on the field to find out and have actual film to evaluate. I'm glad they were able to do that on Saturday. I hope they're able to do it more this upcoming Saturday, because just nobody knows. And certainly what little, people have seen, I know it hasn't looked good. I still think it's too early, to close the book on them. But I also understand that, the day may come very soon where you don't have your season might depend on, getting that right. So, I hope they continue to get him time. Look, we talked about this last week, and I said I wish I could have asked him a follow up, but I'm not one of those people who gets 3-4 questions, and so I did ask that follow up question a week later because it was midway through the press conference, and I always make like a list of 3 questions that I want to ask. That way, I don't get caught flat footed if the person right before me asked my question, and then I'm next. And I'm like, well, shit, well, shoot, sorry.
Mhm.
And at that point, everybody had asked the questions that I really wanted to ask. And so I asked him about the third quarterback, because I mentioned last week I'd like to know what he would say about that. He said he was never close to getting a third quarterback in the game, which I understand. I was just curious if he ever considered it, and he said it was never really a thought. It was just more focused on getting Devin in the game, when they were going to get him in the game, and and seeing how he did. And then I followed that up with asking, like, do you know who that third quarterback would be if and when you get to put him in there, say Saturday? Do you feel strongly about any one of those guys? And he gave me the classic answer of, oh, they're all competing, to get better, and they're going to need all of them and whatnot. So I got nothing there. Look, I threw the line out, guys.
Yeah.
See if he would bite. Knowing pretty well that he wouldn't, but it was worth a shot at that point because everything else I wanted to ask was already discussed anyway. So nothing good there to report.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
My theory, I was kind of thinking that maybe he was going to start trying to get Devin in these next couple of games, get Devin in a little earlier to try to get Julian in.
Well,
He doesn't seem like he's at the point anymore where he cares about hurting Devin's feelings. And I like that. I think we're in a good spot there.
if you feel that way, and I don't disagree with that, then that says a lot about where he actually feels about Devin Brown then, and compared to Julian then, right? Because he's steadfast that, like, Devin Brown, like, he's trying to get Devin Brown in the game. We talked about last week his comments about trying to get Devin Brown in early and when he was going to try to get him in there. He said today that he wants to maybe get Devin in earlier this week if he can, hopefully. Obviously, again, all situational. So it's all Devin Brown. So I guess I feel that way as well. But for everybody who keeps on saying, well, Julian's saying QB2, or he needs to be QB2, maybe so, maybe not. But I mean, Ryan feels pretty confident that, like, Devin Brown's still his number 2 quarterback. He's still his best number 2 option right now. So we'll see how that plays out. And again, the only way we're going to get any more insight into that is to see him on the field for a longer period of time, and being able to do more and get more on film. Hopefully that's Saturday.
He better be prepared to put Julian at number 2 if he puts him out there, because if he puts him out there and he lights it up late in the fourth quarter, man, it's going to get loud.
Yeah. And Ryan knows that, right? Ryan knows that. Ryan knows, and maybe that's part of, maybe he doesn't play on Saturday. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe Ryan knows that. Not that he's holding the team. Obviously Ryan's not going to do that, at the detriment of the team. But I know Ryan knows that if he goes out there, if Julian Sand goes out there, with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and going back to the metrics thing, you let him still sling the ball around and run the offense, whatnot, and he throws a couple beautiful balls and leads the offense down, and on a touchdown drive, it's going to get very loud, as you said, and he knows that as well. So I maybe that's part of it. Maybe Ryan's not going to put him in the game until Ryan's ready to say, like, I think that I would be ready to announce this guy's my backup quarterback if he goes out and plays well today. So it'll be very telling when Julian gets in the game, what Julian's allowed to do in the game, and what Ryan says coming out of that, for sure.
For sure. All right, buddy. Any final thoughts this evening?
No, it's we do these press conferences and we have so many questions. Every one of us, are guilty of it. We have so many questions about specific things, whether they relate to last week's game, or just things that, we've been wanting to ask, but, hardly anybody ever talks about the opponent coming up unless it's one of those matchup games, as Ryan always talks about.
Yeah.
I got a chance to ask Will about Western Michigan just because nobody else was asking him about, the opponent. And it was refreshing to, hear him just talk, about the game coming up. And it sounded like, and I know what are these guys going to say? That they know, what they're going to say about every team that they come across. But it sounded like he had some genuine respect for Western Michigan and, the way they were able to hang in against Wisconsin. So, it was refreshing to hear that. I'm looking forward to, I think this is going to be a step up in competition for Ohio State on Saturday. It's obviously not that it's going to be a massive step up, but I think it will be a little bit more of a challenge, and I'm excited to see that. But in general, I think Ohio State fans feel great this week, and they have every reason to do that after what they saw on Saturday. I think as this team continues to get more and more comfortable, right? We talked about Chip Kelly. We talked to Chip Kelly today, and and he made those same comments. He said he thought it was just okay. His first game, that offense was just okay, but said, as they continue to get more comfortable as a coaching staff, which was kind of a reminder that, hey, all those guys that played their first games at Ohio State on Saturday, that was Chip's first game, back up in the box, as you mentioned, for the first time since 2008 in a new place, and all that time that they have in the spring and the preseason, it just pales in comparison to doing it, it live in a game. So I'm excited for that because I think that next Saturday will be a marked improvement over what we saw last Saturday, and people are just going to continue to just drum up that excitement for this team because I think they're really good. So
yeah, it's a slow burn, just getting a little bit better and a little bit better, and they've got the perfect schedule to do that. Yeah. Oftentimes that happens with a national champion. We've seen it 100 times. They get lucky early with a schedule to be able to do this. But I was happy to hear them point out, that they weren't thrilled with the performance, particularly in the first half. I don't know. I guess all the people that yelled at me for pointing that out can go yell at them now too. They know. Anyway, Dillon, thanks so much, buddy. Always appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Again, I'll continue to tell you I appreciate that you have me on, and I'm always happy to do it. And again, look forward to these conversations throughout the year and just seeing how this year evolves, for better or for worse. At least, if it's for the worse, we won't have any shortage of things to talk about. And I know how passionate Buckeye fans are, so there won't be any shortage of things they want to hear about. So for better or for worse, I just can't wait to see how these conversations evolve because that's just the fun of a college football season, the wild twists and turns and the roller coaster ride. So can't wait.
Sure. And this one's one for the ages. All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
Have a good one.
You too.